Have you ever noticed the appeal to innocence that is so pervasive and prevalent as a fixture in the human condition? I think this was epitomized in popular culture with that line that Jack Nicholson said in that movie. I think it was A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Right? That idea is like a moral certainty of governments and people in power. But this is ancient. I mean, even the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the entire premise of the story is this idea of being in a state of innocence, and you eat from the fruit of knowledge and you lose your innocence by virtue of knowing, by virtue of knowing too much. There's this innate desire on the part of man and woman, I would say especially woman, to want to infantilize the world. And, to be fair, every good and decent parent wants to shield their children from seeing really ugly things. You wouldn't want to put really gruesome imagery in front of a child, right? That's why we have a rating system for movies, so that parents are kind of warned ahead of time that, hey, you may not want your child to see this. And say what you will about censorship in that sense and ratings, I as a parent certainly don't want to be presenting really gruesome things to my child or hypersexualized things. But it's prevalent all the way from how families operate to the way institutions operate. Even corporations want to shield their employees from information about things that the company is doing that might make them feel disenfranchised about working for that company. This desire to want to keep the naked truth of things hidden and behind opaque walls is just part of everything. And I think the reason philosophers tend to be so hated is because they see this and they like to expose it. They like to say, hey, by the way, the truth of it is this, and you're telling yourself that it's this other thing, but that's only because you've been infantilized and no one is actually letting you in on these secrets about how things actually work behind the scenes. And so societies, not only those in power, but societies themselves, the citizens, become so acclimated to this infantilization that they don't want to even see the truth. And I wonder to what extent is this infantilization necessary? A lot of thinkers and philosophers object to it outright and like exposing it and writing about it, like myself. But sometimes I think that through, and I wonder, is that a luxury I have? Because others have chosen not to do that? Would we even have much cohesiveness, much of a society, if we didn't voluntarily surrender to the hypnotic embrace of paternalism, whether it's from a parent, a church leader, a government, a corporation, a medical system, a brand. We like feeling coddled and embraced by delusions. And what that does is it causes things to grow and develop. And I guess, maybe societies could still exist in a delusion-free environment. They may not be as artificially inflated as they are now. Something that you can really see is the case by just looking at the national debt. We've been living in such a delusional state that our eyes have become far bigger than our stomach. And we bite into way more than we can chew, and we borrow against offspring that aren't even here. Perhaps if we built a society that had truth and transparency as its foundation, maybe it wouldn't grow as fast as our society has, but it would grow in a manner that was sustainable and wouldn't be as toxic and in debt as our current society is. I would like to hope that that's the case, but sometimes, I have to admit, sometimes I wonder, to what extent is delusion necessary? And I think this is where perspective plays an important role, because I've mentioned this before, that truth and perspective are different things. If you want to learn more about what I mean by that, I'll put a link in the description. So, we need to, I still think, we need to wean ourselves off of this desire for infantilization. We need to embrace personal responsibility. And as we gradually expose ourselves to the truth, we need to be in a healthy frame of mind and have a sense of perspective about it that takes into account the context of history and the sacrifices that everyone has made to get us to where we are. And not look back with animosity and hatred, but rather look forward with a clear-sighted view of where we went wrong and how we need to correct our actions so that it leads to a better outcome. I think perhaps this is why, as a father, even though I do try to protect my kids from toxic imagery, I don't infantilize them in the way I speak. I make sure that their vocabulary is strong so that I can very quickly and more quickly introduce them to difficult truths about the world. try to expose them to responsibility as soon as possible. Hold them to account for their own actions. And when they're old enough, let them in on some more difficult truths about the world, so that they have the street smarts that I've gained through my life, and they don't have to fall into the same pitfalls that I did. But if you don't expose those things to your kids at all, then you're just setting them up for the same failures that you had. And so truth ultimately ends up being empowering and gives you more agency over your life. But I guess as a parent, just like a parent needs to unfold it with tact and timeliness, perhaps we need our society to gradually pull the veil out of our eyes and show us what we're really dealing with. And that's kind of what's been happening over the last 10 years, hasn't it? The veil is being pulled back. But yet I wonder, even if you pull the veil, how many will choose to open their eyes or to not look away? Because to look into the truth can be very frightening, and it's rarely ever comforting, but it must be done. And that is the job of a philosopher, I believe. To empower discernment in the minds of the listener, the reader, so that in turn you become more agentic and your free will can multiply. Let me know what you think. Is that a good idea? Or are we better off persisting in an infantile, delusional state? Thanks for watching.